Hi, this is Dr. Thomas, and in this review session we will talk about solving equations with decimals and fractions. You need to remember the rules of solving equations. Of course, we know that whatever we do on one side, we must do it on the other side as well. And our whole objective is to get the variable, usually is x, by itself on one side. And it doesn't matter if x is on the left side or the right side. We're just trying to get it alone. Okay, number 2, you definitely need a thorough understanding of how to add, subtract, multiply, divide decimals and fractions. So if you can recall back in sections A and B, those concepts were covered in sections A and B. So by section C, you're supposed to have a thorough understanding of section A and B in order to solve equations using decimals and fractions. So it is a must that you know your integer rules in this section. Again, you should always read the directions because they may ask you certain things. For example, in section B, I think they ask you to change your answer into a mixed number. However, you may not have to in section C and D, so you have that option if they do not specify to change your answer into a mixed number. Also, simplify and reduce your final answer, and always check all your answers before you turn in the exam. I recommend that you actually redo every problem as if you had not done it before, because sometimes you end up writing the problem down incorrectly, and so if you just redo every problem back over, then you can make sure that you did not make that mistake. Okay, so let me go out of this and show you what the written exam looks like in section C. So this is section C. This was the spring 2011 written exam, phase 1. And as you can see, 1 through 7 are solving equation problems. So in this readiness exam review, that's what I want to talk about. How do you solve equations? I'm not going to do all 7, but I'm going to do maybe about 4 of these so that you can start getting the hang of it. Now, let's choose possibly number 2 first. Let's choose number 2 first. Now, and I'm doing this because number 1, pretty simple. If you look at it, how can we get x by itself? We got 32 times x. You do the opposite. So you would do the inverse of multiplication. You would divide both sides by 32. So I'm going to go ahead and do number 2 because most times students have issues with fractions. So I'm going to go ahead and do number 2 right now. X plus 1/3 equals 2 over 12. Now, one thing I notice here is that 2/12 is reducible. Now, you can go ahead and reduce it, but it doesn't matter. You can wait until the end and reduce it. So let's just wait until the end. Now we have x plus 1/3 equals 2/12. Notice here, in order to get rid of this 1/3, because we're trying to get x by itself, in order to get rid of this 1/3, we really need to subtract 1/3. How do we get rid of a positive number? We subtract it. So always remember to do the opposite of what you see. Opposite of what would make it go away. So really, you should say what would make it go away. And here, if I subtract 1/3, it will go away. So let's do that. So we have x plus 1/3. Let's subtract So notice here in red, this is what I'm using to get rid of the 1/3 on the left side. So as long as I do the same thing on both sides, we are actually using correct math. So what happens here? 1/3 minus 1/3 is 0. That's what we want. X equals 2/12 minus 1/3. What do we need in order to subtract these fractions? You just can't go ahead and subtract them like the fractions are now. You must come up with the same denominator. We call it the LCD. So the LCD would be 12 here because 3 can go into 12. So it'll be the lowest number, the least common denominator. Alright? So now we have 2/12, and the equivalent fraction for this 1/3 is 4/12, since 1 times 4 is 4 and 3 times 4 is 12. Now that we have the same denominator, we can combine the numerator. So we have 12, and we have a 2 minus 4. X equals, what is 2 minus 4? Negative 2/12. And since we waited to the end to reduce this, the answer is really negative 1/6. Now, how can we check this answer? Let's check it. You can always replace the variable that was in your original problem with the answer. Okay, so instead of writing x plus 1/3 equals 2/12, we can write negative 1/6 plus 1/3 equals 2/12. Okay, on this side, what is the LCD? It is 6. So let's multiply 3 times 2 to get that 6, but you have to multiply the numerator times the same thing, or it's not what I call legal in math to do multiply a number times something without multiplying the numerator as well. So now we have negative 1/6 plus 2/6, which is negative 1 plus 2 is 1/6, and of course 2 over 12 is also 1/6. Therefore, we know that our answer is correct. Now that's going to take a little bit more time, but it's worth it to walk out of that classroom knowing that you passed the readiness exam because you checked all of your answers. Let's go on to the next one. So let's try number 3 here. It's x over 12 equals 8. Alright, so number 3, x over 12 equals 8. So one thing I want to point out here is that x over 12 equals 8. What is the coefficient of x here? The coefficient meaning the number that's considered to be in front of the x. If you don't see anything there, is really a 1 there. It's really a 1. Alright, so another way to rewrite this would be 1/12 x equals 8. Just in case you didn't know that. This is the same thing as 1/12, the fraction 1/12 times x equals 8. Now, in order to get rid of this 1/12 or this 12, you multiply times the reciprocal of 1/12. So let me rewrite this back over. 1/12 x equals 8. What is the reciprocal of 1/12? Reciprocal means just the flip version of 1/12. So the reciprocal would be 12 over 1. 12 over 1. Now, of course, 8 is the same thing as 8 over 1, right? So, why does this work, this reciprocal? It works because the 12s cancel out. And we got 1s left. They sort of cancel too. But it's still always a 1, even though we say it cancels. So, everything cancels out on the left, leaving the x by itself. That's our whole objective, is to get x to stand alone. And then we have 8 times 12. So we multiply across. 8 times 12 is 96 over 1, which is 96. So I always put it in its simplified version. So always simplify. Do not leave the answer as a number over 1. Always simplify it. Again, you can always check your answer by plugging in your answer into x in the original. So instead of writing x over 12 equals 8, you can say, does 96 over 12 equals 8? 96 over 12 is 8. So yes, it checks out. Alright, let's go to another one. Let's do number 4 here. Number 4, 4.5x equals 17.1. 4.5x equals 17.1. Now, we have 4.5x. That means multiplication. 4.5 times x. So we always do the inverse operation of what we have, and the inverse of multiplication is division. So let's divide both sides by this coefficient here. Do it on one side, you have to do it on the other side as well. So this is really the easy part, because we just already got rid of the 4.5 that was connected to the x. However, we're going to have to divide decimals. Okay, so let's go over here on the side and divide the decimals out. So we have 4.5 divided into 17.1. Whenever there is a decimal here in the divisor, we have to change the decimal or move the decimal so that we're dividing by a whole number. So right now we're dividing by 4.5, but we must move it a certain amount of places until we get to a whole number. So all I really need to do is move it once, because now I got 45. I have 45, and if I move it once here, I have to move it the same amount of times here. So really we're multiplying, or we're dividing 45 into 171. Okay, so let me rewrite that. So right now we're dividing 45 into 171 because all the decimals ended up behind the numbers. So that's the same thing as saying 45 into 171. Okay. Now, whenever you move your decimal, just go ahead and put it right above that decimal once you've moved it, not before. Once you've moved it, go ahead and put that decimal right above it. Now let's figure out how many times does 45 go into 171. Okay, so 45 times 3 is 15, carry the 1, 12, 13, 135. 45 times 4, 22, carry the 1, 16, 17, 18, 180. So that's too much. So it is 3 times to 135, and we subtract. So we got, that's going to be 11, and this is going to be 6. So 11 minus 5 is 6. 6 minus 3 is 3. And I recommend you always add these numbers here to make sure you got 171. Alright, I do. So next thing is to bring down the next number. When you're dealing with decimals, you must continue until you terminate. So you're going to have to add a 0 when dealing with decimals and bring it down. 0. How many times does 45 go into 360? So let's do 45 times 8. So that's 44, 32, 360. There we go. So 8 gives us 360, subtract, no remainder. So that's what I mean about terminates. It terminated because we got a 0 remainder. So the answer is 3.8. Alright, let's try one more. Let's try number 5 here. Alright, 300.33 plus x equals 412.41. Okay. Alright, so here it looks a little backwards, right? But we still have a positive 300.33. So if no sign is in front of the number, it is considered to be positive. So how do we get rid of something that's positive? We will subtract it, okay? So we're going to subtract 300.33 from both sides because we want to get x by itself. So here's how I'm going to write it. And of course, you're going to, normally students do it a different way than what I do. You all put y'all normally do like that. So y'all do the vertical format basically, but I don't do it that way. You do it the way that's comfortable to you. Alright, so right now I'm going to show you what I'm doing to both sides by putting it in red, okay? I'm going to put plus x here, 412.41. I'm going to go ahead and put that minus 300.33 on this side as well to show you in red I did the same thing on both sides. You can't do it on one side without doing it on the other side, okay? So what happens on the left side? This cancels. So we have on the left side just an x now. And we have to subtract this 412.41 minus 300.33. So you can do that on the side. Alright, so that's going to be 11. We need to borrow, make that a 3. Okay, so 11 minus 3. 8. 3 minus 3. 0. 2 minus 0. 2. 1 minus 0. 1. 4 minus 3. 1. I always recommend that you add these two numbers to make sure you get 412.41. Think we got it? So x equals 112.08 or 112 and 8 hundredths. Alright, that concludes this review session on Section C of the readiness exam. Be on the lookout for Part 2 of the review session for Section C.